Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Booktube Chicks Book Club for the month of June. Tonight, we're going to be discussing The Sound of Stars by Alechia Dow. And as always, I am joined by Kathleen from For the Love of Books and Desiree from Libri Labra. And for the next hour or so, we're going to be discussing all of our thoughts related to this book. So if you've never been to one of our live shows before, the way it works is we are going to do a synopsis of the book and a 10-minute spoiler-free time of talking about our initial thoughts, and then we'll go into spoilers for the remainder of the show. So a quick synopsis for this book is, let me pull it up real quick so I make sure I'm saying everything right. Excuse me. Okay. So this is a debut novel following a girl and an alien. Basically, the world was taken over by an alien race, and they are kind of using humans as hosts for more aliens to come to visit Earth. And our main character, whose name is Janelle, is in one of the human housing units. And she has a secret stash of books which are considered illegal. And she runs this illegal library. And then we also have an alien whose name is Morris, and he really enjoys music, which is also illegal. Excuse me. And he discovers her secret library, and I guess the easiest way to put it together is they work together to save the world. That's the part of the tagline. And it involves there's a lot of book references and a lot of references to music. So for initial thoughts, Kat, since you're right next to me, if you want to go ahead and do your thoughts.
Sure. So I believe this was my book pick for this month. So I actually really was excited about this book because it is sci-fi. And everybody knows that I really love sci-fi, and also the book is like super gorgeous. So I was really excited. Unfortunately, the book did not exactly live up to my high hopes. I felt like I was reading a really cringy and really cheesy fan fiction. Like at the very beginning, I actually really enjoyed it. I was like liking it, where it was going, kind of like it reminded me a little bit of it felt a little bit like a dystopian with sci-fi elements, and with the whole, humans being imprisoned sort of, and having basically no rights anymore because this alien invasion, and this girl having like a secret stash of books. And I thought I really liked the premise of it, but it got really, really cringy towards the middle of the book and the ending. And honestly, it started to drag for me personally. It started to drag because it just started focusing too much on the romance aspect of the book. And while that's fine, I have no problems with that. It just felt like it was too much at one point. So I don't hate the book. So initially I did rate it a 3, but I also didn't exactly like the book. So I felt like a 3, I was being generous. So I did lower my rating to 2, but I'm like back and forth on either 2 or 3. I'm not entirely sure. Again, the book is not bad at all. It just, to me, it wasn't memorable, and it just didn't really live up to my high hopes.
Did you want to go, Chloe, or do you want me to go?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I really liked it. Like, really, really liked it. I think in the beginning, I had trouble with some of the things that were happening because it seemed like, and I know as humans, when we are witness to like horrors, I know there's like a jadedness that happens or a callousness that happens, but there was like a couple of things in the beginning that I was like, I felt like the main character was talking about it a little bit too nonchalantly. But outside of that, like one little piece, I really, really enjoyed all of it. And I'm very interested in rereading it. I do think it was memorable. I think it was very current in regards to some of the division that we're seeing in the country right now. I thought the representation was really good. It seemed like there was like representation for introverts and demisexuals and, you know, anxiety. And even though it wasn't necessarily named, it sounded like she might have also had ADHD, but that can look similar to anxiety sometimes. And, you know, there were a lot of pop culture references, but when you consider the storyline, it makes a lot of sense that those two things would be included because books and music were so meaningful to each of the characters. So it makes sense that they would kind of lean on some of those things. And for me, I feel like it was a 5-star book.
So I'm going to lean more towards agreeing with Kat on this. I also rated it 2 stars, but I was kind of shifting between a 2 and a 2.5, which I know that's not a huge difference, but I went into the book with an open mind. I didn't really know what to expect with it. But as the book was going on, I just found myself really uninterested in what was happening. At one point, I felt like the book was going both fast and slow. And I don't really know how to explain that, except I was almost halfway through the book and somehow there were still like 7 hours left in the audiobook. And it just felt like I had already been reading it for so long. I do agree with some of the cringiness. I remember Kat had texted me about a specific cringy part at some point, but I didn't really pick up on it in the same way you did, I think. But I had other elements that were cringy. And the ending was very confusing to me. Some things I kind of predicted throughout the book just based off of hints that were dropped. And it seemed very obvious in the ending. But overall, I was not a fan of this. And I'm still kind of bouncing between that 2 or 2.5. And then I guess we'll just go into spoilers for whoever wants to start.
I mean, I have questions. Because you've both said that elements or aspects of it were cringy, so I want to know like specifics in regards to what you found cringy and why.
For me personally, it was more like the love. The relationship, it felt really, for me, it felt rushed. And then all of a sudden, like I remember specifically reading chapter 22, and they were like talking about how much they loved each other and how much they couldn't see them being with another person. And it was like, okay, I get it. You know, you guys are infatuated with each other, but it got to be like, it was like pages. I remember just because I was listening and reading the audiobook reading the book at the same time. And I just remember like looking up and it was just like minutes of them like just professing their love to each other. And I'm like, it's getting cringy. I just kind of want to skip, but I felt like I was going to miss something. So I just kept going and flipping pages. And that's just how I felt. I felt like it was too insta-lovey for me.
Too insta-lovey because it was like 12 days?
I don't know. It was just too. I mean, sure.
They mentioned it because a few times she was like, "You don't know me," and he was like, "We've known each other for 12 days."
And then 12 days later, they're like, "Oh, I'm in love with you." But yeah, I just felt like it was honestly the romance aspect of it that I think was the part that really just kind of started making the book go downhill for me, because I really liked everything else. I liked the premise. I thought that the whole like vaccine part was really relevant to what's happening, because people who are against vaccines tend to think the way they were portraying vaccines in this book, think about vaccines like people in our right now. So I think like a lot, everything else about the book I really liked, but I feel like because it did have that romance, and the romance was, I feel like, a huge part of the book, and I didn't like the romance, it just made the book go downhill for me.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. I'm glad that you clarified on the chapter 22 thing, because I think I may have just tuned it out at that point where I was just like, I can't. But I also do agree with, normally I am a big fan of romance in books, but ultimately I agree. I think it may have gone better if, instead of it being like a, oh, we've known each other for 12 days, I love you so much, like if, instead of it had been like a friendship, I think that would have gone over a little bit better. Um, and there was a section for me, I don't remember where it was in the book, where uh, she was describing his lips specifically, and I was like, this is, they weren't kissing. I think she was just looking at them, and I was like, this is really weird. I'm not digging it.
But was it weird because he was a lab maid, or like?
No, I don't even think it was that. I think it was just like a very like in-depth description of lips that I was like, I don't think it's really needed that much. But yeah, ultimately, if it had taken the romance away, it may have bumped it up to a 3 or even a 4. I just didn't think it was very necessary in this book.
I'm trying to figure out how to respond to that with like, okay, I get that that's how you guys felt. I guess I felt differently because so much of it was about humanity. And I mean, like any movie that you watch that focuses on our humanity and what makes humans like worthy of saving and worthy of keeping alive, it's always, always, always love, you know, like that's always the thing. And you know, Morris was part of a race that wasn't even supposed to acknowledge their feelings in any way, shape, or form. And I feel like there was so much in the story that kind of required that love and that romance. So I don't think it would have, like, you know, a friend is a friend, but when it comes to love, like the person you love is the person that you're going to walk to the edge of the earth for, you know, like that's the person you're going to risk your life for. You may not necessarily do that for a friend. And we're talking about like the end of humanity. So I feel like a very strong love is what was necessary to the story.
I get what you're saying. And I do agree with you. I do agree that maybe a friendship would not necessarily have made the book better. It's still
I understand what you're trying to say. You're like, I agree with you, but for whatever, it didn't hit those notes for you.
Right? Yeah,
like,
yeah. Again, I don't, because I'm bouncing back and forth on this because I really like some of the aspects of the book. I think like the whole alien species invading Earth and these lab mates that they created to look human, and then they're gonna use the human, like insert like this vaccine and use humans as hosts and blah blah blah. I think that's all really cool and I really like the premise. I just think perhaps the book could have been written I don't want to say written better because I don't think the book was necessarily written bad, but it just, to me, it's just like I didn't vibe with the romance, and I feel like it's the romance that kind of made the book go downhill for me.
I guess I feel like I sort of connected with the main character for lots of reasons. I have anxiety, I have ADHD, I'm an introvert, and I'm also demisexual. So like in the beginning, when she first met Morris, I think there was a little, you know, their conversations could be seen as a bit awkward, and maybe awkward translates into cringy, but I feel like that was super intentional because of the fact that he was lab made and an alien and wanted to understand the human experience, but didn't necessarily have the vocabulary or the insight for that. So their interactions and their conversations were a bit awkward. I know there was a little bit of like secondhand embarrassment in the beginning. And at first, you know, knowing that he was potentially going to be the love interest, I think I was like, how's this going to work? But as they got closer and closer and shared more about stories and music and songs and like how they helped each other and the sweet things he did for her and how he would save her and like was willing to lie for her and like do all these other things. Like eventually I got invested in the romance, and that was what made me want to keep reading, because there's just so much at stake. You know, either of them could have been killed at any moment for like their transgressions. So I think there was just a huge pull there in regards to the stakes involved in the story itself and in the romance. And then I thought it was pretty crazy with the whole, what was her name, Zerola? That was intense for me. I felt like
Why?
Because like their conversation in the beginning, he's just like, "Oh, I'm not good at sex," right? Which awkward.
Me too. Me reading this book, I'm like, where is this going?
So, but it was intense, right? Like, so he doesn't understand those human, what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of like our social dynamics. And there was like a sort of ineptitude there where he didn't understand, like, we don't necessarily just talk about those things so openly.
Yeah.
But I thought it was pretty intense that he was essentially betrothed to someone else, had slept with her, and that didn't go well, and it didn't inspire anything in him, and he didn't feel anything about it, and he was sharing that with Ellie. And then how Orla still came into the picture and was like so jealous of Ellie and was like trying to get him to sleep with her again. It was just like, I think for a YA book, I thought that was just kind of intense. Like very high drama, and it surprised me a little bit.
I mean, yes, I could see what you mean. That scene was just like, I was like reading it and I'm like, what is happening? Why is this woman all of a sudden barging in and wanting to have sex when apparently it wasn't good for either of them? And I'm
right?
Like, okay.
Jealousy's wild. Jealousy will do things to you.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And I thought that I did one thing that I remember thinking. I was like, this is interesting because they're both lab mates. And so they're not, I feel like they weren't necessarily like taught or equipped with dealing with human emotions. So the fact that she reacted that way was interesting to me personally, like her being so jealous that she's willing to do something that according to him was not good for either of them. So yeah, that was,
I mean, she kind of seemed like she was trying to set him up from the beginning. Like, you know, she was instantly like, why are you with this human? Why are you feeding it? Why are you like doing anything for this human? So her jealousy was very, very obvious, but also just, it seemed like she was just trying to catch him in his lie.
Yeah.
Did you guys find that the starry-eyed group being aliens in the end was kind of obvious throughout the book?
I didn't think it was obvious, but like there were moments where he was like, oh, these songs were written for us. So like you could see that there was like a connection there,
like
but
a foreshadowing.
Yeah, but I didn't expect them to be Andarans.
To be honest, I wasn't really thinking about it. It was just like, oh, okay, so like this is fine. So it didn't necessarily take me by surprise, but I also wasn't expecting it either. So, but yeah, that was.
I don't know all of the hints that were shown throughout the book, but the one like glaringly obvious one to me was when they were talking about like a scandal or something that had happened with one of the members. And how
didn't he win some properties or something, like in a poker game or some shit?
It was that, yeah, but the girlfriend or somebody was saying like he's been acting weird, like he keeps saying they're coming, they're just going to take over. And I was like, okay, well, this kind of leads like all of it to the end there. I was though at the end when they were talking about how they knew it was always going to be Janelle, I think. I was very confused on what was happening there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I fully understood why they always knew that it was going to be her, unless, you know, it had something to do with like her love of books being so similar to like Morris's love of music. I don't know.
And kind of speaking of that, can we talk about the tagline for this book? Because I
don't have the book in front of me.
I told this to Kat over text. It was can their love of books and pop music save the world? I was like, what is this? Like,
it could have had a better tagline, yes. But I mean, it does speak to what the book is about.
I feel right like on the nose there.
I feel like just by removing the word pop, though, like, you just remove the word pop, it feels a little bit.
It would have been so much better. I had said to Kat, like, when I knew that I was not enjoying this book, I think I had said to her, like, listen, I read that tagline and I knew this was going to go downhill.
But yeah, no, I like Morris, I will say. I think he was probably, to me, the most interesting character. Like, not to say that the others weren't interesting, but he was the one that I enjoyed reading about the most, just because he was a lab made and he knows why he was made, and yet he still somehow found humanity within him through music and connected with this other human being and completely changed his view of what his alien species is doing, and came to understand the plight of humanity. And so I think he was probably the most interesting character to me. And I really enjoyed reading about him.
He was very complex and had a lot of like simultaneous things that he was doing, you know, like he was doing something for the good of humanity, but he was also lying. So like he was just very duplicitous, which he mentions that he was created to be. This is like a me thing, but the entire time I was reading, like I had such a hard time thinking of him as an alien. Like I kept thinking of him as an android.
And I was trying to get it out of my head. I was like, you are an alien made, you're lab made, you're not, like, yeah. But yeah, I say.
But it was hard because his speech and his thoughts and like a lot of his behavior was so mechanical. So I wish I was able to get out of that, and I don't know how the writing could have like changed that, because it definitely explains how he was created in a lab and who his parents were and all this other stuff. So
I agree, because I had just shortly before starting the audiobook, I had just read the graphic novel series Alex and Ada, and Ada is an android in that. And in that one, they kept talking about how she eats to like to charge, and when he kept mentioning how his charge was low in this book, I was like, well, just eat something. Like the entire time I was like, that'll help you, and then I was like, oh wait, wrong book.
Well, I mean, he did charge from eating.
He did?
Yeah, because there was at some point, I feel like he drank like a shit ton of apple juice to like improve his charge or whatever. So like that part was like really interesting because food helped, sleep helped, but there was still a way to like plug him in for like a supercharge kind of thing. But I remember him explaining, he was like, yeah, if I get a couple of hours of sleep, it'll recharge me like 1 to 2%. I was like, what? A couple of hours? You only get 1 to 2%? Like, a full night's sleep is not much. So, but it seemed like he was intentionally functioning in a drained state. I don't remember why he said that he was doing that, but like, I feel like I was waiting for him to be able to get that full charge, and I wasn't fully understanding what provided that full charge.
Yeah. Moving on from this, sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject. Another scene that I really like was when they were in that is it human like camp thing, and then he was in a cell, and he had like this little interaction with a little kid, and his interaction with that little boy, was it a boy? It changed how his mother felt about the aliens. And I don't know why, but I think that's my favorite scene in the whole book. I really, really like that. Like, he was singing with the little boy, and it just, like, his mother came and, like, tried to pull him away, saying it's dangerous. But the little boy was like, no, he's singing with me.
Right.
And I really, really like that scene.
I think kids are just like really good at being able to, like, they're just really intuitive to be able to pick up on like underlying emotions and stuff like that. Like, you know.
And yeah, and it's like it's like a lot of people say that kids don't learn to hate. They
no, they do learn.
They learn to hate. They don't
Right.
necessarily inherit hate. So
Yeah.
he didn't know anything. Like, I'm sure his parents had been, trying to keep him safe from what's really going on in the world. So haven't really talked to him about the aliens, other than that they're dangerous. But this little boy came upon Morris, and he looks very human. He doesn't look like a scary alien that his parents probably told him. So I just, they're very innocent. So I really like to see.
Around that scene as well, either before or after it, there was the scene with Janelle and the wolves in there. I didn't fully understand that either. Like, were the wolves people? And they called themselves the wolves?
That was my understanding, but I don't know exactly what it was that happened to them. I thought it was like something about the vaccine going wrong in them.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It was something like that, but they were people that they were just kind of like holding in a cell. What did you guys think about when Morris flipped in the beginning? Because I think I was like panicking with Janelle. I was just like, wait, was he really lying this whole time?
Like, are you talking about the first time that they got captured?
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking that at first, but when he was talking about like keeping her with him and stuff like that, I was like, okay, he's fine. Like, it's going to take a while for her to believe him, but overall, I was like, oh yeah, he's not lying.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I agree with Chloe. It's the fact that he was so insistent on keeping her with him made me be like, oh, okay. He's not betraying her or anything or throwing her to the wolves.
Well, I really thought that he incinerated all her stuff. Like, I know later we found out that he didn't, but I thought he had just, and I was like, what? He just like destroyed all that music and all those books. Like, that was the part that just kept messing me up. And I was like, oh my God, if he was lying this whole time, like.
Yeah. No. And just, yeah.
Do you like have any thoughts or opinions on the fact that the book that kind of started their connection was The Hate You Give?
So I don't know how to explain this. It's not specifically about The Hate You Give, but I, for some reason, find it weird when books reference like very, very popular things like that. And I don't know how to explain it in any other way except, okay, so this book is supposed to be set like in our current world. Whereas I feel like when I pick up a book, regardless of whether it's like a contemporary or not, maybe because I was thinking that this was more sci-fi than anything else, I was like, okay, this is a different universe. Like, things that are in our universe aren't going to exist. Does that make sense?
I mean, a little bit. I know that I was having some weird feelings. Like, there were books that were mentioned in the story that I I know of, but I've never read. And for whatever reason, those references felt so much more comfortable than some of the things that I had read. And it's kind of the same thing, but like I guess the fact that some of the other stuff just felt so distant and it felt more historical, I guess, that like I guess there was a bigger sense of detachment. So I don't know if that's kind of how you feel, sort of. But I thought that
makes sense.
It was an interesting like juxtaposition in my brain, because like they're all still pop culture references, just older ones. So, like,
I think it might be because I don't know about you guys, but I can't think of a reference that's not like outdated and used in books. Like we see a lot of the outdated ones,
right? Like,
but I don't see a lot of current ones like that. More current, at least.
There were some areas where she was like, I think maybe she was referencing their kiss and what their kiss was like, and so she was comparing it to like a bunch of different couples, and that also felt like that weird mix, because like, you know, there was Darcy and Elizabeth, which like, okay, I get it, and then there was like Jack and Kate, which I tried looking up, and the only Jack and Kate that I found was in the Lost, the TV show. So I'm wondering if that's what was referenced there.
Isn't Jack and Kate? No, never mind. No, never mind. Go ahead. Keep going.
So I don't know, but maybe I'm missing the Jack and Kate. Maybe the Jack and Kate was supposed to be from a book and not a TV show, but I couldn't find another Jack and Kate. But I wanted to like highlight that because I was like, wait, who are all these other couples? Because she only mentioned their first names.
Here's my take, and you guys might not agree. But I wasn't always, I don't want to say happy. I wasn't always in agreement with the pop culture references that she made. And it's precisely because of what you said, that some of them just, for me personally, didn't make sense. But that could be my fault because I didn't know the references. But it also, to me, it felt like she was just handpicking whatever she felt might fit the category and just inserting it into her book. Again, just my opinion. And the reason why I think that is maybe because of Ready Player One, where there's so much references back to the 80s. But in that book, what he does that's really, really good, the writer, is that he inserts these references, but he does explain them, or in some way he puts it into the story in a way that we as an audience understand it, even though we may not know the reference he is talking about. And in this book, I just kind of skimmed over every time she made a reference to certain pop cultures, because sometimes, to me personally, it just felt like she was just like going on Google famous pop romance songs and just taking whatever's the top 10 and inserting it to her book. Again, that's just how I felt.
I definitely can understand where that is coming from. I did notice that it was very heavily populated with pop culture references, and that most likely has to do with the way that the plot was done.
And it wasn't necessarily like the fact that she did put references in it. I was like totally okay with that, because this is a book where she uses the love of music and the love of books to make these two characters kind of connect and bond. It's the fact that it felt like she was just dumping a bunch of references that didn't necessarily, I just didn't feel like the author itself, knew what she was talking about. It just felt like she Googled most popular romance books or most popular romance songs and just insert those references into her book. That's personally just how I feel.
To me, it felt like she was selecting things that were either meaningful to her or that she was trying to imply was meaningful to each of the characters, or maybe even like both. Like, sometimes you read books and like there's mentions of other writers, and they kind of know each other, so it's almost like them giving each other a high five in their books, kind of a thing. And so it felt like there was a little bit of that happening. But otherwise, it seemed like she was picking things that were probably meaningful to her. That's what it felt like to me. I don't know how I felt about like the whole storyline with, was his name Brixton or Brixton? I think it was Brixton.
Yeah, I think so.
Was he the
brother?
Oh, right. Right towards the end.
Like, I guess that's a bit of a twist. I know, like, Morris was just preparing to kill them. So, I guess it was nice to see that his brother had been on his side the whole time. But like,
yeah,
that's just so rough, though.
I remember thinking, I don't like this guy, and then now I get it. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
I feel like as someone who values honesty and truth so much, like that whole situation, like with Morris and Ellie or Morris and Brixton, where people are like trying to lie to save each other, like that's just like my worst nightmare. Like, I hate everything about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I get why people would lie to save someone else, but like, if you're betraying me on the surface, like that's what I'm going to interpret it as. I'm not going to be like, oh, they're doing it to save me. So I would hate to ever be.
So wait, you don't agree with what he did?
It's not that I'm just saying I would hate to be in that situation and then like to have to forgive someone. Like, do you understand it? Yeah, I understand that Morris is like, well, I had to lie to protect you, to make sure that they didn't kill you. I totally get that. But that's, I think the betrayal still feels like a betrayal in the moment and when it's happening. And I mean, that still hurts.
I mean, I get it. I understand it. But I'm also like, I would rather feel betrayed and alive than being told the truth and dead,
Well, but there was one part where I remember he was saying to Janelle, he was like, tell them this, tell them that. And she was like, no. She was like, I'm not going to betray him in the end. Like, I'm not, she did not feel comfortable doing that. Like, she was gonna.
I mean, I feel like also, this is a plot device that a lot of, not just Alechia Dow, but many people use in books, movies, where a person realizes that it's like what you said, the betrayal still's there. Like, you feel the betrayal, even though they did it just save
for good
you
reasons, yeah.
For a good reason. But it's kind of like that person makes a decision. I would rather him be mad at me forever, not speak to me ever again, disown me from his life. But the fact that he does have a life, like, I feel like he made a choice that he would rather betray his brother and him and save his life than opposed to the opposite. So, and it's a consequence. It's a decision he'll have to live with. So, is that bugging you, the light? Is it like flickering?
Like, it was flickering and now it turned off again. So John screwed them back in and all three of them were on, and then it flickered again and it turned off. So I don't know what's going on with my lights right
I mean, I can't tell if it makes it feel any better.
Is there anything else anybody wanted to talk about with this book?
I think like Morris's ability to be able to like send her messages was kind of interesting. I wish he had, the book's going to do what the book's going to do. And of course she wanted the reader to feel slightly betrayed for a little bit. So, but it would have been nice if he had used that power immediately.
Yeah.
And you know, I would like to say that there's a lot of great representation in this book. I think more than I expected there to be. So I think that was a really nice touch to have included.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any thoughts about like the first time he was touching her? Like,
I may have blocked it out.
I know that like
Remind me again.
I feel like a lot of stories now, at least YA, is just very big on consent, understandably so. And I think I was a little surprised that he was already touching her and then asking, "Is this bothering you?" versus like asking her first before he did it. She did say that, no, you're not making me uncomfortable, which, you know, whatever. But I was still a little surprised that he asked her like after he was already like touching her.
Yes, but he's also lab mate, and I feel like he doesn't know perhaps like what the correct way, the correct way to go about it. I feel like maybe when he started touching her, and I think she tensed or something, I don't know, and then that's when he asked, and she said, "Well, okay, I'm okay with it." So,
but I like that there were certain moments throughout the book where she was like, "I'm not ready to kiss you."
Yeah. I'm like, yes, set your boundaries. It is okay to say no.
But
even in your world, it is.
But it got heated pretty quickly, I guess, because I know at some point she was like, "I have the steering wheel in my back and I don't even care."
What did you think about the vaccine? And how you, like, in our times right now where there's so many people that are, you know, against the vaccine.
So I understand why it was called the vaccine and what the wording was, but as I was listening to it, especially when it was brought up so much, I had to look up and see when this book was published. And it was published in early 2020. So when it was written, it probably wasn't such a stigma,
right,
as it is today.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure the author didn't do that on purpose. I'm just like, now that we have read it, and you know the times that we gone through, and we see like this discord of differences of opinion when it comes to the vaccine, and how the vaccine, well, they call it a vaccine in the book, how it's portrayed in this book.
Well, I guess because, I mean, a lot of people didn't want to get the vaccine because they felt like they were being microchipped, and like,
which is exactly,
or they were getting 5G Wi-Fi or whatever.
I remember that. And I remember someone actually saying, "Oh yeah, there's like this conspiracy about like that." I'm like, "Are you? Please tell me you're joking right now."
But okay,
anyway.
So like he intentionally made the vaccine in a very specific way, and then there was a doctor that corrected what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Did they explain, because I don't remember the specifics, like did they explain what that doctor did, or did the doctor just remove the chip, or did he remove the code that would have been activated by the song? Like, I wanted to know more about what the doctor changed.
I don't remember. I do remember that the doctor just tweaked it, but I don't remember if they actually explained what it was that he did.
Yeah, I remember hearing that he had changed it, but I don't remember specifics.
But it was just like reading about, like, I'm glad we read it now and not like back when the vaccine came out, because I was like, if people, well, the people who read it back then and they're like, you know, against the vaccine, I'm just like, I feel like this book is just like, see, the vaccine is not a good thing, and I'm just like,
I mean, I don't think the aliens were trying to protect us from COVID.
Well, a lot of people don't seem to feel like our vaccine does that either, so, you know. People are like either inserting the 5G in it.
So like, this was one of many like first contact, well, maybe not first because it had been happening for a while, but there are a lot of other like first contact stories. Chloe, while you were reading this and we had read that other sci-fi book, you were like, it's freaking me out, it's freaking me out. Do you feel like one day
Okay, that's the thing that I was trying not to think about while reading this, because there's just a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. And it was like, I didn't think about it as much with this one. And I think it's because I was liking the other book a bit more than this one. So I think that's why I kind of just tried to like distance myself from it a little bit and not freak out. But I will say that I've read too much sci-fi recently, so I think we need to cool it.
Well, we could probably do final thoughts if you want.
Do you not have anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think there's other topics, unless you have something else, Kat.
The vaccine was like the last thing I had in my head.
Then I guess whoever wants to start final thoughts then.
So again, I gave this 5 stars. I liked it. I think it was a creative dystopian and creative in the sense with like the pop culture references and the meaningful aspects of it and the representation and the idea of this lab-made alien. And I think I would read, I don't know if there's going to be another book with this, but I would definitely read more from Alechia Dow. It's kind of fun.
Oh, speaking of which, I just went to her Facebook. Not her Facebook, her Goodreads. Alechia Dow said, someone asked, will Sound the Stars get a sequel? And she wrote, fingers crossed, I hope so. Yeah, she answered another question. I hope someday I can write one. So I'm assuming when she got this book published, she was under contract for just the one book. So maybe. But yeah, so my experience with this book was completely different from Desiree. I did enjoy the whole book if you cut out the romance. To me personally, I didn't vibe with the romance. I thought it was really cringy and really cheesy. However, individually, I liked them as characters. I liked the premise of the book. I thought it was interesting. I tend to really love dystopians and sci-fis. So I liked that it was different, that we have this alien made. He's not necessarily a real alien. He was made in a laboratory, and he has absolutely didn't have like an experience with human beings aside from when he started getting interested in music. And it kind of almost like he gained his humanity through that, and then he became connected with what is her name, Janelle. And he found his humanity through that, and which set off the events of the book. So I really did like that whole part of the book. It just, again, it didn't vibe with the romance, and the romance is a huge part of the book. So I did end up giving it 2 stars, but I feel like maybe 2 stars is a little harsh, but it's, for me, I'm still weighing between 2 and 3. So it's a good book. If you end up liking the romance, it could be a really great book for you.
I agree with a lot of what Kat said. I did end up giving it 2 stars. I am kind of bouncing between a 2 or a 2.5. I'm not really sure where I'm standing with it. Overall, I just felt like I wasn't really interested in the book. I agree with some of the cringy parts as well, and the romance just wasn't really working out for me. And I did find the ending to be a little bit confusing and also a little bit abrupt, but I'm also not sure if I'm remembering it very well. But overall, it's a 2 from me. Excuse me. What month is it? July. For the month of July, we're going to be reading The Goddess Test by Amy Carter, which is a fairly a throwback book, I think, in my opinion. I'm early 2010s, maybe. I honestly can't remember. But I'm very excited to read this book. I read it a really long time ago, and I remember enjoying it, but I also remember nothing about it now. So I'm kind of excited to go in almost blind, I guess, and hopefully see why I really enjoyed it back then. And then hopefully finish the series for once. But our live show for this will be on, I believe it's July 30th is the last Sunday. July 31st at 6 p.m. on this channel. Also, as far as other events that Booktube Chicks are doing, we will have Pages and Pals on July 9th, and that's going to be on Kat's channel, which is linked down in the description below. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern on July 9th. And then going into the third quarter for the Quarterly Romance Book Club, Desiree and I will be reading Dating Dr. Dill by Nisha Sharma. And our live show will be on her channel, which is also linked down below. I want to say it's August 7th, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But that'll be announced on our social medias as well. So that is all we have for this month of book club. Thank you all so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next month for The Goddess Test by Amy Carter. Bye.